Hi, Steve. So I've made this calculation for you and I wanted to go over it briefly. I realize it doesn't actually go very briefly and that's why it took me so long, but I went and researched some of the information and I wanted to tell you a little bit about how my thinking process went, and that's why it took so long, and you asked me to do it for 5%, 20% in cash. So so let's just jump right into it, and hopefully I won't get too confused and don't find too many errors, because I went through this twice and I haven't been able to find any errors. So let's see. So I have basically made this little spreadsheet. It has 5% down here, 20% down, and a cash option, and I'm going to just talk through this really quick. By the way, and I will send you this form so you can play with the numbers yourself. But right here on top in cell A1, this is where I got the idea to do it this way. I've changed a lot of the numbers around, and also my assumptions are different, as well as I actually went on the websites to get the appreciation values and also the median taxes that are assessed on property in your area, which they didn't have that in that sheet. And I also expanded a little bit on that below, because they didn't even go to an appreciation rate. And also I went and made a calculation on how much your down payment actually is going to be. And to be true, this article doesn't include, this article assumes that you only pay 5% down. I changed the calculation to 20 in cash as well. To be fair, one would have, for each option, would have to take the money that you're putting down into each one of those options and consider how much you would make as an alternative. Like, for example, if you put 5% down versus putting 0% down, which I'm not even sure is possible, but you could use the 5% to invest someplace else, the same with the 20%, the same with the cash. And you would ideally have to find what your rate of return is on the money that basically your opportunity cost, and you would have to factor that in. But I kind of omitted that, and I did write it at the bottom so you know what it is, and we'll get to that. Anyways, first option, 5% down, right here. Purchase price, we assumed it's $333K. Will you break even in 7 years or lose? Initially I had thought to put it out 7 years, but when I looked at the numbers, they're going to be essentially the same every year, and also in the out years the variables become more variable, so we won't know exactly what the tax rates are going to do, we won't know what the appreciation values are going to do, and we're not basically going to know a lot of those variables, so it becomes less and less knowledgeable. We become less and less in the gray area what we can assume, because these are already all assumptions, especially if you hold a house for 7 years. Typically, if the interest rate of your loan changes by 0.5%, I think it's 1% or even 0.5%, it's worthwhile to refinance. And that can happen at any time at those 7 years, at which point we basically start over with the closing costs and everything. So there's a lot of variables. Anyways, I'm going to go through the specific variables that I chose, and we can change those as you move forward with this purchase, or if you decide to not go forward with this purchase and put in other numbers for another purchase that you're considering. So for your income tax rate, obviously only federal taxes, because there's no state tax in Nevada. I counted 33% as we discussed. These are, and this is for the 5% down payment, so these are basically all the costs that are associated with being a homeowner. These are costs that you don't have when you're renting someplace. I kind of put the percentage as a percentage of the 333K, as well as I put the amount here, but really want to focus is on the actual interest rate and on the percentage right here. So from that article, they say 1% maintenance cost is about right for for a year, which is this amount, and that's about right. Insurance, about 0.5%, that's about right. That includes homeowners insurance, flood, hurricane, fire, all that stuff. Also, if you have any other additional insurance that you wish to purchase for whatever. PMI, I'm not sure how familiar you are with PMI, but basically PMI is short for private mortgage insurance. You have to pay that if you put down less than 20% down on a house. That basically protects the lender from defaulting on your loan. I have one loan that has PMI that I'm trying to get removed right now because my equity is higher than 20%. So what happens when you have a loan and after you've paid it down and amortized, and now the loan to value ratio goes below 80%, you don't have to pay this anymore. But they have to do an appraisal, and appraisal costs money, and it takes time, and obviously it takes time to pay it down. But if you put more than 20% down, you don't have this expense. Since this is the option for 5%, we have it, and it's typically 0.5% of the sales price. And when I calculated this out, I actually pay a little bit more than that. So this number's kind of low. Realtor fees, that's the 6% that you're talking about. Obviously, when you buy the house, you don't pay the realtor fees because typically the seller pays them. But if you're selling the property after 7 years, you'll be paying them. So we just basically took 6% of $333K and divided it by 7. That's what this number is. Closing costs the same. Assumed $8,000. $8,000 divided by 333,000 divided by 7 years. Property taxes, I actually went on this website and it gave me the median property tax percentage, and that's for Nevada. There is possibly a website someplace that's more specific to Clark County. I didn't find that, but I'm sure somebody could research that and find that and get a better rate. So, and that's actually quite close to the national average, which is 0.93 is what this article said. So I just took it, and that would be your taxes per year. Your interest expense at the 5% down payment would be $12,654,000. The reason this says 3.8, even though we said we're going to use 4%, is just that it's calculated out because your debt is only going to be 95% of the 333,000. So the way this calculation is, and you can see it up here, is basically the sales price times 0.95, which is your loan, 95% of 333K, times the 4%, and then divided again by the 333K. That gives you 3.8% per year because you paid as associated with the 333K, because your debt is 5% less than what the purchase price is. So overall, when you add all these up, the cost of home ownership is 7.89% per year, and this is the dollar amount. Now we're getting to the deductions, which is what you can take off your taxes. The property tax shield has to do with the property taxes up here. So basically, this number right here is the same as this number. That's the one that we calculated. The 333 times 0.84 gives us this tax dollar amount per year. This tax dollar amount translates to this kind of savings at 33% tax rate, the 33% tax rate that you have. And if we calculate that out over the 333K, then that would be 0.28 per year versus that's basically your tax savings. So this is the dollar amount that you will basically get back. But again, don't look at these numbers too close. Look at these percentages. So this is the home ownership return that you get on your taxes for owning a home that you wouldn't otherwise have if you had. So this is your tax savings on your home, on your property taxes, because you own a home. You wouldn't have this if you didn't own a home. The same goes for this mortgage tax shield. It's a little bit higher, obviously, because you're mortgage interest expense is a lot higher, but the calculation is a little bit different here, because usually what we did is we calculated the interest rate times the 0.33%, and that would have been your tax savings. However, a person that does not own a home in the United States, and I haven't even thought about that, and I've never even mentioned it to you, and I'm sorry I didn't do that, but this article pointed that out to me, and it makes sense to me now, is you do get a standard deduction if you don't own a home, and the standard deduction, I looked it up for your age and your lack of disability, and there's a bunch of other questions. You can go to the IRS website and put all that data in, and your standard deduction for last year, 2014, would have been $6,200. I'm assuming for 2015 it might be a little bit higher. But basically, to calculate what is your actual savings on a house, because you would get the $6,200 deduction anyways, whether you owned a home or not, you would have to take the interest expense and subtract the standard deduction from it, and you would get this number. So E13 minus 6,200, this is your interest expense for the year. And when we multiply that times your tax rates, 33%, this is the amount that you get. If you multiply that out over the cost of the actual home ownership, the 333K, this is your interest. This is your percentage savings for having a mortgage at 95%. So these are all the expenses. These are all the savings, these two. So we have a delta of 6.97%. 7.89 minus 0.92 is this number. And that is the amount that we need to make up in appreciation for the first year in order to break even on this house purchase. So I went, now they said for me to go to like the Federal Housing Association website, and I went ahead and went to all these websites, and then there's probably dozens and dozens more. And as you can see, the appreciation values for Nevada are quite different according to what website you go to. I'm not even sure, this is kind of a crazy number, 35%. Everything else kind of looks more or less the same, but it varies widely. It would probably be worthwhile to talk to a realtor or Stefan, or maybe somebody that's a little bit more experienced than Stefan, to find out, and I'll make sure I'm recording here because I've talked a lot. Yeah, I'm still recording. To find out what has been the average appreciation rate of houses in Summerlin over the last, now I would prefer to see it over the last 5 years or 10 years or even longer. But I'm not sure if longer gives us better information, because I want to say that probably values have increased at some point in time in the 50s or 60s or whenever Las Vegas was built up first. And of course we had the mortgage crisis in the 2000s. So I'm not sure how far back you want to go. I tried to stay with about 1 year. Most of these are 1 year where I could get just 1 year. And this is the average of all these numbers. All these numbers, this is the average. So in 1 year, if your gain is 13% on this house and your cost of home ownership 6.97%, you would have had a gain in the first year of 6.03%, which would translate to roughly $20,000. I didn't make the calculation out for the next 6 years, but if you did, you would basically take that number and multiply it times 6, or let's just do it times 7, so you have all the 7 years. So you would basically gain $140,000, and that's after calculating in taxes and all the other stuff. So you would still win in this market, and that's definitely assuming that this average of 13% appreciation is true. And that's in the sky. I wouldn't be able to tell you that one way or the other. So this is where your biggest gray area is. In this option of 5% down, your down payment would be $16,500 roughly. There's ways to invest that better than sinking it into equity, but it isn't very much. I wouldn't be able to do very much with this. Like if you were to give me this amount of money for me to invest for you, I wouldn't be able to get you anything great other than tax lien foreclosures, which would get you at the least though 20%. So in all fairness, you would have to take into this whole entire calculation how much this money could make you elsewhere, because that's an opportunity cost that's sunk into the equity of this loan. But then again, I believe that the mortgage officer that we spoke to said that we would have to at least put 3% down and not even get a loan. There's no option of a 0% down. And so this might be an OBE, overcome by events type number, so don't even worry about it. It makes a difference later on when we look at this sheet. So let's look at this sheet. This sheet is the 20% down, and the calculation essentially is the same. I'm not going to walk through it again one by one. You see the numbers where I've changed them. You don't have to pay a PMI anymore. Also, your interest is lower than what it is at the 5%, obviously, but not much. It's only about $2,000. And so basically, this home would have to appreciate by 6.07% over a year to break even, while as in this option of putting only 5% down, it would only have to appreciate by 6.97. So you see the difference isn't very big. That's why I always say don't put that much cash down, because you're not getting much gain from putting more money down. It's a little bit, but that's not very much. And so your 1 year gain would be, and this is all the same, 13% minus 6.07, which is 6.93%, which translates into 23K. And if you compare that to the 5% area, it's not that much of a difference. And when you calculate it out into 7 years times 7, it's only $20,000 more. So it's not that big of a difference if you put 20% down or 5% down, even though there's no PMI. So let's look at the cash option. And I'm going to send this sheet to you, and you can play with the numbers and ask me questions. And I'll be glad to go through all this. And all these little red things, these are all the websites where I got this information from. And feel free to add more information and find more places where they tell you what properties appreciate in your area. That's why I was asking you for the zip code also, because I wasn't sure exactly what zip code it was, but it looks like Summerlin is a very, very good area to get into in the Las Vegas market. And so it had the highest appreciation rates of the whole city. So you're looking in the right place is what that tells me. So let's go to the cash option. All this information on this whole sheet is exactly the same. What we have changed is there's no PMI again, and there's also no interest expense. Woohoo! Even though we have 4% fixed interest rate, there's 0 debt, so there's no interest expense. So your total expense for home ownership was 0. I'm sorry, I should have typed. See, I found an error. So it would be a 100% payment, not down payment, because it's just payment. So I'm going to say that. So we have, this is the same, that's the same, no PMI, this is still the same, property tax is the same, interest expense is 0, so PMI and interest expense go away. Your total cost of home ownership with 100% payment is 3.59%. In dollars, that translates to this amount. Your property tax shield in this case is exactly the same as it is with all the other options, because your taxes are determined by the sales price, not your down payment. And so your mortgage interest tax shield is the only thing that actually completely goes away in this option, because you have no mortgage. Now, you still would get the standard deduction on your taxes, but since you have no mortgage to use this as an opportunity cost, I just put 0 there. I'm not really sure if if it would be useful to put this amount here as a positive number. I'm not even going to go there because you're going to get standard deduction no matter what. And we can actually take that standard deduction out from the other two options as well, since it's such a weird number because it applies whether you have a mortgage or not. Well, as the other two only if you have a mortgage. So, but anyways, when I went to this website and I studied this article right here, it made sense to me that yes, this could be the opportunity cost, and let's put the numbers in there the way that they are, so we don't underestimate what the actual return is going to be. So the total of home ownership savings in this option is 0.28%, and this is the amount, which is this number minus that number. And so basically, when we move down here, total cost of home ownership with 100% payment, cash payment of the house, is this $359. 3.59% minus the 0.28%, which is 3.31%. So $11,000. So your house would have to appreciate by this percentage rate or that amount in the first year to break even. Again, these numbers are all the same. The average, I still use 13%. If you subtract 3.31 from 13%, you get roughly 10%. 10% of $333,000 is roughly 33,000 or 32,000, since it's a little bit less than 10. And if you multiply that out times 7, apologize, I haven't done that before, your savings is this amount. And so we have 140, or your gain in this market, 140 at 5%, 160 at 20%, and 225 at 100%. Now when you take the difference between these three numbers, 140, 160, and 225, and this money right here, if it is sunk into this equity, that's all you're going to get. But you're still going to get this amount, and you can definitely buy something from this amount and make even more. So that's why I always told you is do not put your money into this huge equity in a house that you're sitting in, and it's lazy money. It doesn't do anything for you. So the opportunity cost of making a cash payment on a house is huge. It's huge. You do get more money in terms of return over the 7 years, but how much money can you make off of $333,000 over 7 years on, let's say, 6 other properties? And that was the very first video that we recorded, you and I, in Las Vegas. And I don't even know what the number was, but it was more than this right here. So you can make twice as much. You definitely can make up the difference between this and that, or this and that, by investing this money someplace else in rental properties. So I hope this makes sense. The big answer to your question was, is it worthwhile, or am I just going to break even? I think if this is the right appreciation percentage in the Vegas market, you're going to gain. Again, I can't guarantee you this percentage. Nobody can. That's kind of like up to the sky. But if this is a true rate, and of course we'll have to research this some more, but if this is a true rate, 13% appreciation, you're going to win. That's why I keep telling you, you need to buy. You need to buy, whether you buy this house or another house or any house, especially in Summerlin, you're going to gain. So unless, of course, there's this huge, massive meteor that hits the city of Nevada, I mean the city of Las Vegas right in the middle, I think you'd be safe sinking your money in there. And I would recommend to put as little as possible down, 5% or less if you can. So I hope that was helpful. I hope I recorded all of this because I talk a lot, and I'll send you this table, but you'll have the video to look at it, and so it makes sense to you. And I also save this, that way if your numbers change or you find some other information where the assumptions change, let me know, and I'll just change the numbers. This is all done now. It should be really quick to adjust the numbers. Okay, well, happy investing.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.